Do it. We're live.
Here we go. Fear Not Podcast. And we're live. And we're live. So yeah, I guess, and also, I know, a little bit about your background, so I'm going to take a stab at an intro, but please fill it in.
Sure.
What I do know of Shannon Keegan, our guest on Fear Not podcast today, is that Shannon is a professional opera singer. Amongst other charitable endeavors that I know you pursue and whatnot, which I'd love to hear about, but professional opera singer. You've been in Europe recently. I imagine other places in the world. I've not a lot of knowledge on what the opera lifestyle brings, but it is incredibly impressive to achieve that status as a professional opera singer. One, I'm sure it's an understatement that you can sing very well, but uh, the other stuff that goes along with that. I mean, just the traveling, the preparation. Becoming a professional at anything, especially in the artistic domain, requires a tremendous amount of dedication.
Yeah, they say
It's
it takes
more
like
than
10,000 hours to become a master of
I've heard
something,
that.
right?
I've heard that, and I'm sure you've got more than 10 grand logged into
I think
singing.
so.
But yeah, Shannon, I'm super stoked about this. I really appreciate your time. Is there
Yeah.
anything I missed, in terms of an introduction of a? You're the first professional opera singer I've ever talked to, so excuse
Well,
me if
that's
I'm a
really
little
cool.
slow.
I'm honored to be your first opera singer. We're a little
Yeah,
rare. There aren't too many of
yeah,
us.
true.
Um, it's a very difficult lifestyle and it's a very difficult discipline.
I
So we're
bet.
a bit few and far between. So when you find us in the wild, it's like finding a unicorn.
So let me ask just this the first question. So it's like, when did you determine? You know what? I'm gonna make a run. I'm gonna make a run at becoming a professional singer.
Sure.
I imagine you
So
sang like your whole life, probably.
yes, absolutely. Like my mom recently told me that when I was like 3 months old, she wrote a letter to her mother in Hungary.
Hmm.
Back in the 90s when they were writing letters. So she sent this message to her mom, and I was only 3 months old, and she said, "This child is going to be an artist."
Wow.
So my mom knew very early that
Hmm.
I was going to do something artistic. And she was very insistent when I was a child of putting me in music.
Hmm.
However, I am a deeply headstrong person. And if I decide that I don't want to do something, there is not a force on heaven, earth, or hell that can make me do it. So she did all the right things. She put me in ballet, she put me in guitar, she put me in piano, she put me in violin, and I violently rejected all of them.
Wow.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah, I didn't want anything to do with it. And then as a last ditch effort, my mom never forced me to do anything I didn't want to do. She picked her
Hmm.
battles with a very strong-willed child. Um, but she said, you have to do choir. You have no option. You have to be in a
Okay.
choir. So
Yep.
she auditioned me for a semi-professional children's choir when I was about like
So
6 or 7 years old.
you started with a semi-professional or outfit.
Yeah, yeah. They were just, she was just like, go do this. And I
Wow.
sang like some song about a ladybug or whatever. And they were like, oh, she has a natural vibrato. And I was like, I don't know what
Hmm.
that means. So they stuck me in the children's choir and I did that for like 11 years. But there's a difference between, doing choir as a kid and then, making the decision to become a singer. And I kind of came at that
It's
a little
usually a
backwards.
lot of people do the former, very few do the latter.
Exactly. So I kind of came at it at an odd angle because at the same time, throughout my whole life, I've been volunteering with animal rescue,
Hmm.
specifically horse rescue. So at the time, from like I was maybe like 9 years old to like I still do it to this day. Like tomorrow we're going to
Yeah.
the farm. I work now at a farm animal rescue sanctuary. We have like
Wow.
70 animals in there. One, I'll give you the name of that place because it's a wonderful, wonderful
Awesome.
charity and wonderful foundation.
Yeah.
But so when I was working, I was like maybe 9, maybe to 10 years old. I was working at this one particular horse rescue. And we got a very particularly bad abuse and neglect case come in, a little tiny pony
Mm.
about 2 years old. His name was
Wow.
Isaac. And I don't know what possessed me. No one could touch him. He was so afraid of people's hands that if you walked into his stall, you had to keep your hands in your pockets or behind your back. Because he had been so horrifically abused that even the sight of a human's hands was terrifying and he would fall over. And he had some neurological problems as well from being beaten so often. So a
Jeez.
very, very broken creature.
Mm.
And I immediately fell in love with him, and I was determined to be the first person to touch him. And I
Mm.
don't know what sort of possessed me to do this, but I decided that I was going to take a manure bucket, flip it upside down, and sit in his stall, and I would sing to him for hours and hours and hours and hours. And after many months, I was the first person that was able to touch him. And
That's incredible.
yeah, it was really because I consider myself, I consider artists, public servants, and what we do is an act of service. And that was the first moment in my life, at 10 years old, when I was like, this is a creature that has no idea what music is. It's not necessarily identifying with music, but it's
Mm.
identifying with me caring for it with my voice.
Mm.
And it began to associate the sounds that I was making that were nice with someone it
Mm.
was safe around. And that really profoundly affected me,
Mm.
realizing what I could do for this little creature and how that could translate to helping people as well. And I know how over the course of, the next almost 20 years, how many times music has saved my life. And I
Mm.
want to be that kind of conduit for other people. Because there's something
Wow.
about music, and in my opinion, in classical music, that really taps into these universal emotions. Because it's a
Mm.
misconception that music is a universal language. Because if you look at, Eastern music, or you even look at African music, and they don't apply the same Western aesthetic values.
Mm.
They don't sound the same. There's no relationship. So music itself isn't necessarily a universal language, but the emotions that you're able to convey through music are what the universal language is.
That's
So
so
that
cool.
was, yeah, that was kind of the motivation, um, you know, wanting to help. And the best way I know how is by offering myself and offering my heart, because I always say that I was born with a broken heart. And I don't know, when you meet someone and you really feel like they see your soul, even if you don't know them very well, there's a
Wow.
comfort in that. And that's why we identify with so many of even, rock music, pop music, everything. I just happen to
Mm.
gravitate towards classical music.
Sure. That's incredible. Gosh, there is so much there. The first thing that really strikes me, and I was having a conversation recently with an actor who said something similar, and it was
Hmm.
sort of, it flipped it on its head a little bit for me in terms of the idea of giving
Hmm.
as an artist.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I think there's a I think the average person, right, not the professional and not the person that's arrived at this level that you're at, but I'll take myself as an example. I'm an amateur musician, but I have a profound deep love for music.
Yeah.
But, if I go on stage, or especially when I used to,
Hmm.
and I'm working on this, your inclination is to feel nervousness about, are they gonna like me? Are they gonna think I'm good? Are they this? And
Yeah.
you're being very selfish in that moment. You're worried
Yes.
about you, and
That's
you're worried
incredibly
about
insightful. Yes.
And what this guy said, and I loved it. It was on a podcast a couple ago, and he's a voice actor, and he was
Mhm.
talking about doing theater and things like this. But his thing was talking about, think about what you're giving to the audience.
Yeah.
You're not there for you. You're there
Mhm.
to give them something. And
Yes.
as soon as you do that, though, it calms you. It very
Mhm.
much calms. You're like, I'm not asking for anything here. I don't,
Yeah.
I'm offering to you,
Yeah.
which you're willing to, take or not, and they will, or they want it. They don't come to watch music
Mhm.
to not like it, you know.
Yeah, that's what
Um,
I say to young singers, especially in audition situations. Everyone is rooting for you to do well. No one wants to see someone go up on stage and bomb because it's
yeah,
uncomfortable.
it
And
is.
you're absolutely right that there is a certain amount of ego and a certain amount of selfishness that goes into, how are they going to feel about me? And of course, it
Hmm.
does matter when you're selling yourself as a product because if they don't like you, they're not going to buy it. So there
Yeah.
is, it's a double-edged sword because you have to be at once extremely concerned with how you're being perceived and at the same time not give a fuck about it
Yeah.
because the
Exactly.
people that you're meant to reach are the people that are going to gravitate towards you. And you're not a
Yeah.
product if you're a product for everyone, you're not saying something artistically. You're
Hmm.
just acceptable. And that's
Yeah.
boring. And that's not
Yeah.
something that moves people. So it's an honor to have people dislike what I do, or it's not to my taste or whatever,
Hmm.
because I'm
Sure.
like, okay, great. That means I'm saying something and I'm saying something
Yeah.
unique and it's mine. And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
artists too have a compulsive need to share. And I think that's what divides, people who decide to become a professional artist from people who decide to stay at an amateur level, because both
Right.
can have incredibly fulfilling careers, amateur and professional. I think, and
Hmm.
both have this unbelievable desire to share. There just
Yeah.
becomes almost a pathological, like sickness when you're a professional artist to just rip yourself open all the time and give whatever comes out.
When it's a lot of vulnerability. I mean,
It
and
is.
and that's, you've got to be very comfortable.
Yeah.
Again, like you said, it's like this dichotomy.
Mhm.
On the one hand, you sort of don't care. I don't care
Yeah.
what anybody thinks. At the same time, you're bearing your soul, and you're opening yourself for people to really be harsh, and sometimes they are, especially in the modern
Yeah.
day.
Well, every
Um,
act of creation is also an act of destruction.
right.
When you make something, inevitably something else falls at its feet. And, when you're putting something out into the world, you open yourself up to be hurt. And
Mm-hmm.
it's another dichotomy where you have to be remarkably vulnerable and open, but you also have to be incredibly thick-skinned and strong. And this is
Yeah.
something that, we're trained to do in a way. We get massive amounts of criticism constantly. So how do you
Mm,
maintain this openness and vulnerability and curiosity
yeah.
while still protecting yourself? Because we've seen it so many times with artists. They open themselves up too much, they give too much, and they don't fill their cup back up. And then what do they turn to? Drugs, alcohol, sex
Mm,
addiction, all sorts of things. Because it's a
mm,
wound. I think
yeah.
when you're an artist, there is some sort of a wound that is open in you, and you are healing it in yourself by sharing, but
Mm.
also allowing it to open even bigger sometimes. And so people find unhealthy ways to try and patch the wound. Yeah, I think that's a really difficult
Wow.
part about being a professional artist.
Yeah, and that's incredible. And the risk, and one of the things, I mean, I call the podcast the Fear Not podcast, because I love this kind of central theme in life of fear and
Hmm.
risk, and the association of fear and risk. And as somebody, so you're in live, theater.
Yeah.
There's probably no riskier form of art,
Yeah.
because if you're a painter, right, you don't put your picture up until you like it. If
Yeah.
you're recording an album, you don't publish it until you're
Yeah.
happy with it. If you make a movie, you can do many takes. If you're performing live, the risks are for real. I mean, there's no do-over. Um, do you, as a professional, like how many shows have you done? You'd say over your life? I mean, it's many,
Oh my God.
countless. Let's just say it's
Oh,
countless,
a whole
hundreds,
bunch. Yeah.
right?
Probably
Do
about a
you
hundred, I would think, at this
okay?
point.
A hundred shows.
Yeah.
Do
That's just
you
like
get
individual
nervous?
productions. Like there might be more I do a
Well,
run
that's
of a
not
particular
performances.
event. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was
Performances,
talking more like how many performances? Like
oh God, oh God, probably upwards of 1,000 at this point, honestly.
lots. Okay,
I've been doing this for 10 years. A
a
shitload,
shitload
yeah.
of
Very
performances.
technical term.
Do
Yeah.
you get nervous before a performance? That's like probably the number one question that maybe
Yeah.
is dorky for somebody
No,
to
no,
ask a
no.
professional musician, but
It's really not because I mean like Luciano Pavarotti, everyone knows who he is. He
mhm,
threw up before every single show. He had
really,
horrific stage fright. And he has the voice of an angel, you know? Um,
it's
when I
incredible.
was younger, I was a lot more fearful. As an adult, I always joke, I'm like dead inside. My heart rate actually drops when I hit the stage in a
It's like a
performance.
zone,
Yeah, yeah.
like a flow state almost.
Yeah, it does get like that. Um, in performance, sometimes when I'm
Mhm.
auditioning, because that's the scariest thing I think we have to do is auditioning. I get
Mm.
the flutters, and I'm like, oh, please give me a job. I need money. And then and competitions too. Those are a little different, a bit of a different beast. But when I'm performing, I find I'm only nervous if I'm not prepared. If I'm not 100% totally confident in my ability, in my preparation, because
Mm-hmm.
I love a quote that is, you never rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your preparation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you can have all these great expectations for yourself, but if you don't set a foundation to fall
Mm-hmm.
onto, because the bottom line is you only get a couple 100% days in your career where you sing perfectly, and it couldn't have gone any better. You maybe get that 3 times in a 40-year career. So
Wow.
you have to be able to operate at a high level from 60 to 80%. And how good that 60 or 80% depends on how well you prepare.
Mm.
So I find I only ever get stage fright if I'm just not as prepared as I like to be. And I love to be over prepared. I want to be the most prepared person in a room. Also because I have several learning disabilities, so it takes me longer to get to a place where I'm really comfortable. And that's a difficulty that I have to overcome as well. Not a lot of elite classical musicians have, very disabling learning disabilities. I have ADHD, I have dyslexia. I also have an audio processing disorder, which is fantastic for a classical musician. Just,
Wow.
so
That's
my brain isn't exactly optimally wired for my career, but I also love to do things that scare the shit out of me. I've always been a kind of person that I push myself to push my boundaries constantly, and if I'm not doing that, I can't be happy. It's a bit of like an adrenaline junkie. You get addicted to how you feel when you overcome
sure.
something that you told yourself you couldn't. Um,
That's
and
so cool.
yeah, so I'm lucky
That's
that that's my personality, and I'm also lucky that I'm very type A. So that kind
yeah.
of can negate some of my ADHD tendencies. We love to procrastinate, but I also love what I
Mm.
do. So I get a huge dopamine hit from from preparing because it's so fun for me. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I always say that if
That's
I'm prepared, heart rate drops. I'm like, let's go,
yeah.
let's make something.
And so as the again like the dorky fan of music and not
Mhm.
the professional musician, I think there's a probably a conception amongst non-professionals that you're just always prepared. Like if I gave you some music, you just
Mhm.
belt it out. And I probably to me or
Mhm.
most like 99% of the world you would be.
Mhm.
Like you could just probably sight read something and people would be like, "Look,
Mhm.
we got to record that. It was perfect."
Yeah.
And then
Mhm.
you'd like be like, "Oh, it sucked," and whatever. But it is sort of amazing to think that you could be nervous
Mhm.
anytime. when it came to your profession, and like what's your process when you are in those moments of having the fear, the flutters, the nervousness and whatnot? Do you consciously like have a thing like, okay, I'm gonna breathe, or I'm gonna do this, or are you just like, let's fucking go, and you just like punch through it?
It's a little bit of both. Like, I'm a big talker. Like, some people go to auditions or competitions or whatever, or before shows, and they don't really want to interact with anyone. I get a lot of energy. I'm a huge extrovert. I get a lot of energy from other people. And so if I find myself just feeling fluttery, feeling upset, feeling uncertain, I just go and find someone to talk to. And it doesn't even, usually we're not even talking about what's about to happen. And it's not about distracting myself either. It's just about, I have this energy and the energy has to go somewhere. So I can't just sit, and ohm the energy away. That doesn't work for me. I'm a very kinetic person.
Yeah.
So going and finding some sort of an outlet, and in my case, it's having a good conversation with someone, that always calms me down. That always
That's
it's just finding a place to put this energy, because nervousness is just energy. And you have to find
hmm
a way to channel it outside of yourself because it's just not helpful.
yeah.
And then there are times where I'm just like, Shani, you're being silly. Get over yourself. Like, this is an ego thing. Like, get
Interesting.
over
Just
it.
acknowledging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you're being silly. Just let
Yeah.
go and go have a nice time. You like to do this. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Why are you
That's
complaining?
cool. Yeah. Now, what about the work? So, to be prepared, that's
Yeah.
an incredible amount of dedication, and I
Yes.
can only imagine. Like, what do you? Maybe a dumb question. Do you sing every single day? Like,
Yes and
do
no.
you
So it depends.
concentrate? I'm sure you're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
are you like, I'm going to sit down and practice every day?
Yeah. It depends because again, I have these learning disabilities and I'm a very strong-willed person. If I decide that
Mm,
I don't want to do something, even subconsciously, I really can't force myself to. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't like to either because I can't be productive if I'm forcing myself to do something. I have
Mm-hmm.
to wait until I feel like yesterday. I didn't sing yesterday. I didn't feel like it. So I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
gonna. Today,
Right.
I feel really jazzed and I want to sing. And the day before that, I felt really jazzed and I sang, for 3 hours sometimes. And sometimes I only sing for 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So I really just allow myself the space to make a decision on the day instead of saying,
Mm-hmm.
from 3 to 5, we are practicing this.
Right.
That doesn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because also sometimes if I'm working on a role or working on a piece, whatever, I'm just like, I just can't do that today. I need to sing something else. And so I work on something else, either something I
Mm-hmm.
want to do or something I'm doing much later. Just to, we're all zoo animals and we need different, enrichment in our enclosure. We do
Mm-hmm.
the same thing over and over and over again. You're like pacing around your cage, like I'm gonna lose my
Yeah.
mind. So
Yeah.
I go and I play with something else. Because ultimately for me, I have to be approaching the work from a play standpoint and not from a work standpoint. And the
That's.
second something becomes work, it feels negative. And if I'm just
Mm,
being playful and being silly, and this is something me and my voice teacher talk a lot about, and you just allow whatever the hell to come out of your mouth and you don't over monitor it, that I think is so much more productive than being like, okay, today we have to do scales and today we have to do staccatos,
mm,
and we're going to work on mezzo di voce. And I'm like, okay, if that
right.
happens, great. Some days I'm really
Right.
jazzed. I just want to do exercises, but some days I'm like, I just feel like singing something nice and feeding
And
my
so
soul.
at a professional level, so you still have a voice teacher,
Absolutely. I
and
think the
you still do exercises. So
absolutely.
you never arrive at a place of complacency.
If you ever think you are done learning, your career is over. And I think that's for everyone.
I
If ever
agree.
there comes a moment that you're like, I've got this, no, you don't. First of all, no, you don't. Second of all, there's always something else to learn. I switched voice teachers 3 years ago, And for
Yeah.
the past 3 years, and I've had like a bunch of voice teachers, and you stay with them as long as they're useful, and then you move
Mhm.
on as long as once they turn out they're not. And
Yeah.
I had to do a lot of like landscaping, let's call it, with this new voice teacher, which was like basic shit that I was like, I haven't done this since I was like 16. And he was like, well, you need to get over
Mm.
yourself and just do it. And I was like, okay. So for the like first 8 months I was working with him, we didn't do repertoire. We just did exercises.
Wow.
And the exercises too, it was barely any singing. It was a lot of screaming and like bird noises and like crazy primal
Mm.
sounds to really get the idea of what is my voice capable at the extremes of both range. There's a concept, we have vocal registers.
Mm-hmm.
So women have three vocal registers. We have our chest voice, which is what everyone speaks in their chest voice. Then you have your
Mm-hmm.
middle voice or your mix voice, which is a mixture between your chest voice and your head voice. And then, of course, you have head voice. So when you
Mm-hmm.
hear like Ariana Grande hitting those very, very high notes, right?
Sure.
That's head voice. And then when you
Mm-hmm.
hear her kind of singing in the middle of her voice, that's a chest mix. And then if she gets
Mm-hmm.
really low, that's the chest voice. And most popular music singers are singing really only in the chest head mix and the chest
Mm.
voice. Classical singers use all three registers.
Sure. Everybody's
So
familiar with that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So when you're training, a big part of our training is getting the registers to like each other, which they do not.
Mm.
And so this was something we were really focusing on at the beginning. And this is something you learn when you're just starting how to sing, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So it was really remarkable to go back and be like, everything I know is a lie, and starting over from scratch. And it's a painful process. Learning can be really
Yeah.
painful. But I see him once a month, because that's all I can afford, and also time wise, it's just
Mm-hmm.
it's an hour for we really only do 50 minutes because you also just can't absorb so much information after 45 minutes.
Mm.
It's good to do things in bits and pieces, and that goes back to my practice process as well. I really only do like bouts of 15-20 minutes, like maybe 3 or 4 times a day. Because
Mm.
sitting down, some violinists, they sit and they practice for 8 hours. I'm like, I would run into traffic. Like I have to have breaks, and you can only absorb so much after a certain amount of time.
No, that's
But
true.
I think humbling
Okay.
yourself to recognize you're going to be a student for the rest of your life, specifically as a classical singer and classical musician, that's something that you have to reconcile with. You're never going to know everything. Also, with women and men, your hormones change. That has a huge
Mm.
effect on your voice.
Oh yeah.
Menopause and childbirth have huge effects on your voice. So as you
Mm.
go through your life, your instrument changes underneath you, and all of a sudden you're like, I can't sing. What do I do
Wow.
now? So you have to relearn, and you have to move with this instrument that is your body, and your body goes through so much over the
Yeah,
course of
that's
70,
so
80
true. And
years.
it's the only instrument really. You buy a guitar, it's a guitar forever.
Mhm.
But your voice is an instrument that is organic, and
Yeah,
that's incredible. I think the idea of lifelong learning is
yeah,
universal, no matter what
yes,
you
I
decide
agree.
your domain is. That's so cool. I want to go back to what one of the things you said very early on about music being different in terms
Yeah.
of it's one of the things, and I've come to this conclusion for myself. I'm not going to question music anymore. Like
Mhm.
you can question a lot of things. Why is something like this? Why does this happen? Why?
Mhm.
Music, don't ask why. Just
No.
enjoy it because it is something that is deeper than any of the other academic, or scientific things. There's not a good explanation as to why, for instance, a minor chord emotes a sadness, or
Yeah.
why, that. I don't know. Maybe somebody out there would be able to actually say scientifically
Mhm.
why certain chord progression. You could show the same chord progression to 100 people and say, "Did this make you happy or sad?" And you'd get a hundred
Yeah.
percent of people agreeing
Yeah.
somehow. Like you said, words, poetry, different languages. You
Yeah.
couldn't show the same poem written in English to 100
Mhm.
people across the world, and they wouldn't understand it. It's just ink on a paper, but
Yeah.
music makes people feel, and that's
Mhm.
something that's very, very amazing about
Yeah.
music. Um,
There's a kind of
how
mysticism about it.
it's it's the biggest mystery, but you just got to go with it. You just got to
Mhm.
take it for granted. Um, when you use music, you've
Mhm.
said that it's helped you help others, it's helped you help yourself.
Yeah.
Um, how do you use it as a tool other
Mhm.
than performing professionally? Do you get? I guess this is the crux to my question, and
Mhm.
I'm asking it because I don't want to assume.
Mhm.
Do you get to a point if you've devoted your profession to music that it loses the mysticism and it's a tool
Mhm.
for a professional tool,
Yeah.
or do you have the same connection to music that you started off with?
Yeah. It's a great question. Because certainly I think everything is cyclical. And if you get into a rut, of course you're going to start thinking, this is just the thing that makes me money.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a certain kind of barrier you do if you want to stay sane. You have to be like, this is just my job, and it's not who I am. I always say
Mm-hmm.
separating the singer from the person is
Mm-hmm.
extremely important. They have to exist independently, and you have to develop a personality that is totally independent of your identity as a musician.
Hmm.
So, yes and no. I think, like, I'll give you an example. There are two gigs I have coming up this year. The one that I have coming up, and they're both French opera. They're both grand French opera. They're both with an orchestra. They're both in a beautiful concert hall. There's one that I am doing for the paycheck, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel no connection to it, you
Hmm.
know? And I'm just like, okay, I have to get through this. I'm not super excited about it. It's going to be fine. I'll probably have a great time because I always do. But
Mm-hmm.
this music isn't really doing anything for me.
Hmm.
But it's 5 grand a night. So, I need to put my girl pants on and just sing the notes.
Yeah. Yep.
And then there's this other one that, I mean, this is my soul music. Like, somehow this composer reached into his soul and found some sort of tether that is now attached to mine.
Hmm.
And this music means more to me than anything I've ever sung before. And I
Wow.
really think I will grow as a performer, and I have really something to say about what's going on in this opera. And so, in a way, I do the first one to kind of pay for the second one,
Mm-hmm.
because I have a lot of, when you prepare your voice teacher, my voice teacher charges $180 an hour. And my pianists, it's anywhere between 40 to 60 bucks an hour. And operas are long. They take a long, long, long time to
Yeah.
prepare. So you have to finance them, especially the passion projects.
Hmm.
Because there's one recital I'm doing in a couple of months. I'm only making $1,000 a night. That's like not even a quarter of how much my nightly fee is. But I love
Hmm.
it. And it's with a good friend. So I told my agent, I don't care that it doesn't pay very well because this is something for me as an artist and a person.
That's
Uh,
cool.
yeah, so I think, and every artist does that. And some people are more concerned with making money than others. I certainly am very concerned with making money. I wouldn't be doing this professionally and asking for money if I didn't want to make money off of it.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm also very young, and I think there's a kind of naivete I still have that I'm like, yay, music is so fun and so beautiful, and everybody is nice. And, I think everyone gets jaded after a while. So,
Yeah.
come back to me in 20 years and I might be like, frickin' classical music, man. Why did I do this to myself? Like, I could have been a doctor. Like, I have a good brain. What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
So I think everyone is different. And I think it's also cyclical because, like, last year around this time, I was so, so, so depressed. And I was just not
Hmm.
happy. And I was like, fuck this music thing, dude. I'm torturing
Wow.
myself. And
Yeah.
now this season I have so, and yeah, this is something I'm talking about with my therapist because I'm like, this season I'm like happy as a clam because I've got all these projects that I'm really excited about, you know? But there are going to be seasons that are fantastic and there are going to be seasons that aren't. And I have to learn how to be okay in both
Mm.
situations. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so I hope that answers a bit of your question.
It totally does. It totally does. Now, what about the people around you in your, your community? Do you perform with like the same group all the time, or is it different people, or is it some of the
Yeah.
same?
I mean, the opera world is so small. So you're going to run into people all the time. I'm a freelancer, so I don't
Hmm.
belong to a specific house. In our world, you have two kinds of singers, basically. You can be a freelancer, or you can do something called it's a German term. You can have a Festvertrag, which just means stable contract. And this is a uniquely I'm not going to say uniquely German, but it's a mainly German thing that happens in Germany. There's some in Austria and there's one in Italy and I think there's one in France now where they have what's called an ensemble, which is
Hmm.
not a choir. The choir is different. The ensemble is a collection of anywhere between 10 to 40 singers that like belong to the opera house and they get a monthly salary. And some opera houses use them they build their whole season around their ensemble. So their ensemble's doing leading roles, and they really only hire guests for like specialist repertoire. Because there are
Hmm.
specializations also within just being an opera singer. You can specialize in certain kinds of repertoire.
All right.
So they'll hire out for, some specialist stuff if they need it. But then there are opera houses where they only hire really big stars and then they use the ensemble to fill in the smaller roles to save money. Because the big thing is the ensemble singers, you trade off stability, a lot of money for stability. Because they're getting paid anywhere from 3,000 to 10,000 a month, but consider German taxes, the tax rate is 39%. So even 10 grand a month. And then you have to pay your agent, and all this other stuff. It's
Yeah.
usually 10% for opera. So 49% of your earnings are gone just off the bat in Germany. So
Wow.
even 10 grand a night, 10 grand a month is not so much and ends up being about five. But you get that every single month, and you get a pension, and you get health insurance, and all sorts of stuff that's provided by the
You're
opera
an
house.
employee basically. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's
Hmm.
that's one route that singers can go to, or they can become a freelancer. So I decided to be a freelancer. It's a lot more lucrative, but it's a lot more unstable. So, like I
Yeah.
said, my highest fee right now, and I'm just starting out. So the
Hmm.
fees can range from 1,000 a night to 50,000 a night. The top stars are making somewhere between 50 and 60,000 per performance.
Wow. That's incredible.
It's incredible. So I'm
Yeah.
making a respectable, usually around between 4,000 to 6,000 a night. You
That's
know,
pretty good too.
it's very nice. And we
Yeah.
run anywhere from 3 shows to 10 shows to 25 shows, depending on how much money the house has and how much interest the public has in a show.
Wow.
So yes, the environment changes for me very frequently. So like I was in
Hmm.
England all this past summer at a company called Glyndebourne, and I've worked with quite a few people that were in the show with me, just around, but I'd never worked
Hmm.
for that company before. And the next thing I go to is in Chile, in Santiago, Chile. I've never freaking been to Chile. I have
That's
no
cool.
connection to this house. They just heard me in an audition and they loved me and they gave me a leading role. I was like, thank you very much. But
That's
my best
cool.
friend from my master's is playing my husband in that role, in that show. So that is really nice, but he's the only
Yeah.
person I really know from the cast. But then the woman I'm double cast with, I met her years ago at a competition and we've just followed each other for years because we both like cats. So I
Yeah.
know her from our online interactions, that kind of a thing. So every
Yeah.
gig, but then like in the fall, I go back to Stuttgart where I did my apprenticeship,
Mm.
and I know everyone at that house because I lived
Mm.
there for 2 years and I only worked at that house basically for 2 years.
That's
So
cool.
it just depends. So you always find someone. I had a roommate in England because her and I did a concert in Berlin together 3 years ago and then decided we liked each other. And we're like, let's live together while we're in England and save some money.
Mm-hmm.
So you make some really great relationships, but this is something they
Yeah.
talk to us about, especially if you're freelancing. It's an unbelievably lonely profession. I'm
Really?
single, so I don't take anyone with me. I go gig from gig to gig. The longest ones are 6 weeks,
Wow.
usually. I had this one in England was almost 3 months, which is quite long.
Mm.
You're traveling by yourself. You miss
Yeah.
birthdays, you miss weddings,
Yeah.
you miss funerals. Yeah, all of my childhood pets
Mm.
were put down while I was on the road and I didn't get to say goodbye.
Mm.
So you miss a lot when you're on the
Yeah.
road.
Yeah.
And you're never, I don't have an apartment currently just because it didn't make financial sense because all my contracts were so long and I just go from one to the next. So I just rent an
Yeah.
apartment where I'm at. And then if
Yeah.
I have like what, 2 months off, with my mom, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I was like, why would I rent an apartment when I'm not doing anything, not making any money in these 2 months?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not having a place that's mine and to like put my mugs down, that's really difficult.
Sure.
And not having a partner too, and I haven't wanted one and I'm not particularly looking at the moment, but it's difficult to be by yourself so often.
Yeah.
And certain shows you make really good friends and certain shows you don't.
Mm.
So it's
Interesting.
and then a lot of those relationships too are quite superficial. You know,
Yeah.
I think artists too, we can make friends and love people so quickly, but then once the show's over, who
Mm.
sticks around? And that's difficult.
That was exactly the question that I was about to ask was you're putting on this performance as a
Mhm.
team.
Yeah.
Do you form a I guess you sort of answered it, but are you performing for each other or are you performing for yourself? Or are you
I think it's
performing for
it's both. And for the audience, I think it's all three.
sure, yeah.
Because
Mm-hmm.
you perform for yourself because we all get some sort of gratification out of it. And then
Mm-hmm.
we perform for our colleagues. You want to make sure that you're at the best level that you possibly can be for your colleagues. And you want to
Mm-hmm.
impress them, especially if you're like the baby on a production, which has been me my entire life so far. I'm exiting baby stage. The baby always wants to impress people.
Yeah.
And and then of course the audience, it matters how they react to what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it depends. It's a combination of all three. And then there are some days where you're like, I fucking hate this colleague, and yeah, I'm gonna perform for them to like be like, fuck you. That kind
Yeah,
of a
yeah.
thing. Like, look what I can do.
I
There's a
like
great
it.
story of Maria Callas, who's a very famous singer. The tenor in the show she was doing was just being a jackass. And so her and the mezzo soprano in the show, they went off into a corner and were like, how can we piss him off? And the mezzo was like, please, at the end of the act, take the high, high, high note, which isn't written. And Maria Callas was like, okay. And then you hear this recording where the tenor is singing his big long line, and all of a sudden Maria Callas is like a fire alarm on top of and you can only hear her. And the tenor stormed off the stage. He was so mad that
That
she
is
had done that.
awesome.
But she was like, don't be a jerk. You know?
Yep.
Like, if you're going to
Yep.
grandstand, I'm going to grandstand. Two can play at this game. So sometimes there's
Wow.
friendly or not so friendly competition on stage as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. Now, when
Yeah.
you guys get together for a performance, like you're saying, okay, this might be a 6 weeks
Yeah.
performance. How many days, weeks do
Mhm.
you practice before you
Yeah.
go and perform?
So this is a great question too, because there's a couple of different kinds of productions you can do. You
Hmm.
can do new productions, which is an old opera done in a new way, right?
Hmm.
So like Carmen, and they decide to put Carmen on the moon, which has been
Oh,
done.
okay.
So they update the production, or it can be a traditional production just going in a different direction, whatever. And then you
Okay.
have world premieres, which are brand new operas that have never been done before.
Hmm.
These two kinds of productions, depending on where you're at, they can rehearse anywhere 6, 8, or 10 weeks. And that's just
Ooh.
rehearsal. And then they can run for another 2, 3 weeks, or even months sometimes, depending on how much space. Because we're not like Broadway, we really don't perform 7 days a week.
Hmm.
We only perform, I mean, I did a show, I performed like twice a month. I was there for 2 months. We had two shows in August and then two shows in September.
Hmm.
So, but the Opera House does a bunch of different things, in the interim. But then this show
Oh,
I'm doing in Chile, it's three shows, bang, 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 one day
mhm.
between each one. So it
Hmm.
depends. And then you have revival productions, which are old operas and old stagings that have existed
Hmm.
forever. And there's a German
Yeah.
term for that as well, Wiederaufnahme, which just means like recording. So
Hmm.
typically, how those ones work is you're sent a video recording of the last time they did the opera. You watch the video, you write down your staging, and then you have between a week and 3 days to stage it all and then perform it.
Wow.
So that can be cuckoo bananas. Because like the
And
new production,
you have to memorize like every word, all the words and everything.
yes. Yeah. So you're
Right?
memorizing your words, you're also memorizing your colleagues' music. You
Yeah.
can't just know what you're saying. You have to know what people
Yeah.
are saying to you. You have to know what's being
To
said
react
about
and stuff.
you.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then too, musically for cues, you have to know because also we're humans. We make mistakes. Like you said, this is live theater. You're
Mm.
gonna fuck up.
Oh, really? So that happens?
Yeah, all the time. All the
And you
time. And you just
roll with
have
it
to,
and make it seem
yeah.
natural because nobody
Well, you
probably
have,
notices.
nobody notices except the
Yeah.
conductor who looks at you like, "What are you doing?" And you're like, "I'm sorry. I got
Who is
lost." And
in
they're like,
charge? Who's in charge of an opera? Is it the conductor,
"He likes to
or
think so, yeah."
is there a director or a
Yeah.
producer or anything?
Of course, we have the conductor who's in charge of the orchestra and the musical aspects, and then we have the director
Okay.
who's in charge of the scenic aspects. We might have a choreographer if they decide they want to torture
Mm.
us and make us dance. And then, of course, you have the producer of the opera. You have the intendant, which is like
There's a
the
lot of
big.
bosses.
There's a lot of people on stage. Then you have the stage manager who's in charge of making sure you're safe. And then
Mm.
there's a lot of moving parts. It's a huge enterprise to put on a show. And there's a lot of people, sound designers and lighting designers and scenic designers. So if you're lucky, it's a little decentralized and it's a very collaborative
Mm.
environment.
Hmm.
Once you get on stage, typically it becomes the conductor's show. If you have a bad conductor, I
Mm.
mean, they could be a very good conductor, but in my opinion, if you're not a collaborative, good human, you're a bad conductor. I don't care how good your technique is.
Agreed.
If you have a bad conductor, they make it about themselves. If you have a good conductor, he or she
Hmm.
or they understand that this is your show, and they do everything they can to make a singer's life easier. Because there's a bit of a
Hmm.
stereotype in the classical music world that singers are dumb. Because a lot of us don't start studying music
Really?
until we're 18, 19. Yeah,
I
18,
would have
19 years
never
old.
thought that.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm also very clever, so. There are some, believe me, there are some singers that I'm looking at you and I'm like, the lights are on and nobody is home. I'm like, how are you able to do this job? Like you're dumber than a bag
Oh,
of
that's
rocks,
funny.
respectfully. It's so I mean, it's just like any profession. There's an idiot. There's always going to be an idiot, who somehow
Yeah,
sings like
yeah,
a
yeah.
god, and you're like, okay, great. You have no thoughts to impede your singing, so you just sing really well. It happens.
Yeah, yeah,
But singers, we start later than most instrumentalists. But I had a
mm,
great conductor tell me. He said, singers are not dumb; they're busy. We're on stage, we're
I
memorized.
like that.
Most
Yeah.
instrumentalists are not. The conductor usually is.
Mm,
But we're memorized. We have to act. We also have
yeah.
text, which is what sets singing apart from every other musical discipline. We have text.
That's true.
This
It's
is what
notes
makes
and
us,
words.
yes, it makes us magical in a way that we have text as well. But that's another thing you
Mm.
have to memorize and be totally cold on. And you just make mistakes
Well,
because
you're
we're
probably
also
singing in
singing.
other languages. Do you sing in other
Exactly.
languages?
I sing in 11 languages.
Do you know what you're saying, or you just know the
Yes,
sounds?
I have to translate everything. So you're also memorizing not
Because you have
only
to
what you're
know, like,
saying.
you can't be singing something sad, like some horrible words, but you've got a big smile on your face.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So you
Yeah.
translate everything.
Wow.
So you're also
Wow.
memorizing your translation in your mother tongue, and the lyrics, and your staging,
Gee.
and the music, and God forbid choreography. Like,
Yeah, really. That's wild. So how
it's a lot.
much of an opera is just the skill of acting, which is for some people that's all they do. Like a lot of people
Yeah.
just act, and that's enough. Yeah, like is that is in an opera? What percentage
Yeah.
of it is acting, and maybe it's 100% singing and
Yeah.
100% acting. I don't.
In a perfect world, it is 100% singing and 100% acting.
Mm,
If you're a really good singer, what I always say is that I'm training to get my voice out of my way so that I can
mm,
convey what I want theatrically and emotionally.
mm.
So you always want to get to a point where your voice is no longer an obstacle because it's just tough to sing. It's hard.
Mm.
And you
Yeah.
you train
Yes.
so that you don't have to think about it. It just becomes second nature. And then you can focus
Hmm.
on things like connecting with your stage partner and making dramatic choices.
Mm.
But there's certain things where I'm like, I would really love it if I could lay down this whole scene and just sing, but I have to hit a really high note. And it's kind of hard to hit a really high note when you're laying down. So now I have to get up and sacrifice something
Mm.
dramatically to do something vocally.
Interesting. Yeah.
So there are physical
And that's the
limitations, but
preparation. Yeah,
yes.
the preparation is all of those minutia, I would
Yeah.
assume. I guess I'm speculating,
No, you're right.
but you were talking about, and I actually loved your thought on preparation. The funny thing is, so that quote that you said, you don't rise to the level of your expectations, you fall to the level of your preparation.
Yes.
And this is what I love about art, especially, is that it transcends so many things. But I've only heard that quote one other time, and it was from a Navy SEAL friend of mine talking
Hmm.
about combat.
Yeah.
So it's like the same. It's the same. Like whether you're in art, whether you're in business, whether you're in
Yeah.
war, whether you're in sports, that is it's a universal thing. But
Hmm.
it's not so much like, can I sing? Obviously, you can sing.
Yeah.
It's not so much do I, but it's like, and even like, oh, I know the lines, but
Hmm.
how do you act the lines? And how then do
Yes.
you make it? And I would have never thought about, like, you have to actually think about your body position
Hmm.
and
Yes.
how that aligns with the lines and the theme and whatever's going on in the show. I mean, it's that minutia,
Yeah.
I would
And
assume.
sometimes, I mean,
That's,
directors, they love making you do crazy shit. Sometimes you're even naked on stage. So then to
yeah.
be fully naked, literally, art like your soul is naked
Wow.
and then your body is naked and have to
Yeah, that's
find a
no
way.
longer a metaphor.
Yeah, yeah. And also, I mean, like the way your body moves when you're singing isn't always
Mm,
extremely attractive. You're using a lot of muscles. And so you have
yeah,
to figure out how to, let that go too. And
incredible.
there's a singer, she's a very successful singer, and she's also a pole dancer. And so a lot of
Hmm.
directors really love that she can pole dance, so they make her sing while she's pole dancing. I mean, that's cuckoo bananas, you know?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. People they find a niche and then they have to, exploit as much of that niche as they
Mm,
can. But it's a totally different
yeah.
level of preparation that she then has to do if she knows she's going to be pole dancing in an opera and singing.
Well, mm-hmm. That's crazy.
Yeah.
There's so much that it's impressive. So let
Yeah.
me ask you this question, and I asked this question. It's a bit of a shotgun question, so take your time.
Mhm.
What is the hardest challenge that you've had to overcome in your journey to becoming a professional opera singer?
Mhm. I think it's the biggest challenge that I have had to overcome is my tendency for self-sabotage and self-destruction. I'm a very impulsive person. I the risks I take are not always calculated. They're just done. And that can be a good thing, but that can also be
Yeah.
incredibly destructive to you personally and
Hmm.
mentally. So it's overcoming this natural tendency of mine to, and again, this is a double-edged sword because a lot of times I put myself in a situation that's above me and I do rise to my expectations because I have such a backlog of
Hmm.
preparation behind me. But that doesn't mean I don't absolutely fucking torture myself beforehand. And I don't like this about myself. Also, that, maybe this is something I'm entirely capable of, but I keep telling myself that
Hmm.
it's not. Oh, you can't, this is not your repertoire. You can't. I just went through this summer. And I'm a supremely confident person. So sometimes I turn
Yeah.
into someone I don't recognize that just loves to self-sabotage and say, no, you can't. I think that's the biggest challenge that comes up often because it's fucking hard, especially with the brain that I have that isn't optimally wired for what I do. I self sabotage constantly with negative self talk.
Hmm.
And that is just so frustrating. And I'm in therapy and I'm working on it. And it's also one thing to recognize when I get into these patterns. So
Hmm.
even though I'm very confident, I'm a very happy person, there is an inner
Hmm.
life inside of me that is destructive. And I have to keep a handle on it to not let it get out of control and not let it stop me from doing the things I know that I'm meant to do. So that's
That
that's
is
I think,
so incredible as an answer and this perception of yourself. And the thing that's incredible to me is one, I recognize those same traits in myself. Two, most of the people that I know that are very, very successful
Mhm.
have the same traits. And I
Yeah.
would just go on a limb and say most of the people in the world, if not all, have the same trait.
We all
And
do.
it,
And I think what can set someone apart from being successful and not being successful is your ability to either tell yourself to go fuck yourself, you know, and your ability to accept that these are thoughts you're going to have and you have to
yeah,
move with them instead of move against them. Because telling yourself you're an asshole for thinking this way is not helpful. You have to take
hmm,
these thoughts with tenderness and understanding and say, I have to move with these emotions because butting my head against them is only going to hurt me more because there's
yeah,
no getting rid of them. So you just have to find the healthy way to carry them and be tender and gentle with them and with yourself. And that's,
yeah,
I think, the thing is too, is I hope that's what sets people who are very successful apart from people who aren't. But I know very successful people who aren't tender and gentle with themselves. And that's
yeah.
what
That's
makes
true
them
too.
successful. But then, they have
Like
these
you
really
said,
unhealthy
there's a
coping
risk there.
mechanisms.
Exactly,
Yes.
like you said early on, there's a risk there in that you can burn yourself out that way,
Yes. Yes.
and it is that we go right back to where we started. That's insane contradiction of
Yeah.
you need to be manic in your
Yeah.
pursuit
Yeah.
of success, yet somehow have the resilience to accept the failures that come along the way.
Yes. Yes,
It's
because the
just
greatest learning opportunity is failure. And,
yeah,
and failure hurts and it makes you feel stupid. And especially if you tried so hard and then failed, because it's one thing to know you failed because you didn't try hard enough.
that's the
But to
self
try
sabotage.
so hard and still fail, that really sucks. But that's
Yeah.
just a fact of life. And you can't be afraid of trying so hard and still failing because you learn the most from that.
Mm-hmm. That's the incredible, if not the pinnacle, I would say, of strength,
Yeah.
of mental fortitude is that willingness to say it is so easy to create a little out, like even subconsciously,
Yeah.
like I'm gonna give
Hmm.
this a shot, but I'm gonna like not I'm not gonna practice so much so that if it doesn't work
Yeah.
out, I can be like, well, I got distracted by this other thing, and
Yeah.
if it
Yeah.
wasn't, but when you're like, I am 100% in, it's do or die, it's all or nothing, and then it turns out to be nothing. It is. It's devastating in so many. I don't. I can almost guarantee that that is exactly what separates the people that, rise to this highest level,
Yeah.
is their willingness to do that. And man, that is insightful.
It's
And
very vulnerable to go
you
balls to the
know,
wall, you
yeah,
know?
it is. And you can tell
People
people
judge
that, yeah, like even just the way that you just described failure,
you.
so many people may not have even had the courage to even get to that point of knowing
Yeah.
that, and but the cool thing, and you said this early on, and I've said this myself, like once you do prove to yourself something, like that is an addiction. That is, and there
Yeah.
are chemicals, there's brain chemicals, there's
Yeah.
neuroscience behind it, but you become like, okay, I did that, and I never thought I could do it. Like, what
Yeah.
else can I? What else do I not think I can do? Because now I got to
This is
do
the
that again.
thing. Like many years ago, I got a fortune cookie that like really stuck with me. And it was like, don't let what you perceive you can't do get in the way of what you can do.
Yeah,
And that was a big thing for me, especially I was like 18, I got this thing and I was like, you're right. And but that stuck with me because I like that it said perceive you can't do.
yeah,
Because, I
exactly.
think about myself 10 years ago when I was just starting to learn how to sing, and I'm like, look at what I can do now after 10 years. My 18-year-old self would be fucking mind blown. She would be like,
Yeah,
what? That's cuckoo bananas.
yeah,
So that's the thing is like what you can't do right now is not necessarily what you can't do in 5 years, in 2 months, in 6 days.
100%,
It
hundred
changes.
percent. And it's one on one hand that's true of, I'm sure, the technical aspects of your singing,
Yeah.
but another one would be like if you told your 18-year-old self like you're gonna go on a stage in front of thousands of people and you're
Yeah.
gonna do this whole thing, you'd be like, no, that sounds crazy.
Yeah.
And that's the coolest thing.
Mhm.
And I actually, I've sort of been like an amateur student of this whole idea of exactly what you're talking about, which is
Mhm.
the self sabotage, the
Yeah.
idea of allowing the fear, and in some ways the imposter syndrome. And I think a lot of the successful people that I know and talk to,
Mhm.
even when they outwardly have like this
Yeah.
extraordinary confidence, I think there's always this thing. I don't know, and I don't know if this is everybody. I know it's me in the roles that I've had that have been successful, and in some of the things that I've done, where I'm like, am I really am I really what people seem to think I am? Like I don't,
Yeah.
and but I do think that's super common. And I've talked to many,
Yeah.
many people in elite places where, and I think even that can creep in and allow you
Yes.
to enable your self sabotage to be like,
Yes.
I don't know. I look at that person now; they're really good, and I'm not that
Yeah.
good. And
Absolutely. I
that's
think
that.
it's also you have to accept that there's always going to be someone better than you. There's always going
Mhm,
to, that you perceive as better than you. There's always going to be someone younger. There's going to be someone more beautiful. There's going to be someone more intelligent. There's going to be someone more dedicated. There's going to be someone that is going to be better than you. And you have a
mhm,
choice to let that destroy you or let that motivate you. Because we can only be as good as we allow ourselves to be. And there is
mhm,
a certain level that you cap out at, and that's fine. I can get to this level, and that's the level I can get to. And this other person can get to
mhm.
a way higher level than I can. And I have to be okay with that because that's just a
Yeah,
reality of life. And I mean, believe me, I struggle with this. I struggle with jealousy and I struggle with, wanting it now instead of, I know it's going to be better in 5 years, but I want it now. This
mhm.
impatience. And that imposter syndrome creeps in. You see someone, you're like, they've got an incredible voice. My God, it's just so natural. And then you try to nitpick, oh, but they don't do this. Oh, I have this and they don't have that. And that's also
Mhm.
self-destructive.
Yeah.
Trying to make yourself better than someone is just always a bad idea.
Yep. Man, that's
So
that's so
this
cool.
is a tough thing to deal with as well. This imposter syndrome thing. someone better than you comes along and you sit there and you're like, ah, I am a fraud. Delightful. And thank you for confirming what I have
Yeah.
always suspected. But that doesn't have to be true either. You can say, oh, they're a lot better than I
No.
am. Either I get to work
Yes.
and try to catch up, or I accept. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, they have something different from me
Yep.
that, is more marketable. Okay, I can let that
Yeah.
destroy me or I can move on,
Sure. So let me
you
ask
know?
you the bit of the flip side of that question. Can you recall in your career the biggest victory you've had in terms of overcoming
Yeah.
something you didn't think you could do, or like your best, like your best, like I was this close to failure, and I had this,
Yeah, I pulled
and
it
I
out.
pushed through.
Yeah. It actually happened kind of this summer, and this is something I'm still like bittersweet about, like, because I still don't entirely know how to feel about it.
Hmm.
I accepted a contract for something that really I was like, I can't do this, actually. There's a skill called coloratura in classical music, which means that you can sing really fast. It's
Hmm.
a lot of little notes, and it's like all this crazy stuff. There's a fantastic singer, Cecilia Bartoli, who's like an expert at this, and she ruined it for everyone because no one can sing as fast as she can. But this is a basic, skill that you need to have is flexibility in your voice. And I really didn't
Yeah.
have it because 3 years ago I wasn't with the right teacher, and so I didn't have the technique to support flexibility.
Hmm.
And so I was like, you know what? I got this contract 2 years ago, and I was like, I have 2 years to figure this out. I should have figured it out before 2 years ago, but let's say yes, and I'm gonna give it a try. And
Hmm.
boy, I fucking tortured myself for those 2 years. Tortured myself. It was miserable, miserable.
Hmm.
And then I got an out, like you said, like 10 days before the contract started, I started a new medication, which really
Hmm.
fucked my voice, like you wouldn't believe.
Oh
And so I
wow.
stopped the
Hmm.
medication immediately when I realized it was fucking with my voice. But then I was like, I have
Hmm.
10 days to recover before this contract starts. And then it takes a long time. Takes more than 10 days for medication to get out of your system and yada, yada, yada. So I really wasn't singing at the level that I had prepared to, 2 weeks
Hmm.
before. So there was a drastic drop in my capability because of the medication. I admit that this was something that I was
Hmm.
outside of my control. I didn't know it was going to happen.
Yeah.
That was my out, that was my,
Hmm.
oh, it didn't go as well because I was on this medication, whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I made it very clear to people, I'm not comfortable in this repertoire. It's new to me. I'm still figuring it out. I'm really scared. I always say when I'm scared because it's rare when I am. And I say, I just
Hmm.
made it. I'm fucking terrified. This isn't the repertoire I think I'm good at. So you can be harsh. Tell me what you need, what I need to know. Tell me what I need to hear, in order to be
Hmm.
better.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I kept a really good attitude for like 90% of the contract. There was like one day where I started to like hysterically cry. And luckily, I had lovely people around me who really believed in me, and especially my co-star was just the fucking nicest guy, and he made me so comfortable.
Hmm.
That really matters. And I knew I wasn't going to be
Hmm.
judged by him, and he held my hand through it, and there was a lot of eye contact, and being like, "It's going to be okay, Shannon, just sing," that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And I did really well when the performance came, and I when the performance came, and I am proud of myself because I
That's
did
awesome.
overcome something, and even how it changed overnight because we did a run through the night before. That wasn't
Hmm.
disastrous. It just wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, and so it was a big knock to my confidence before the performance. And then I got up
Wow.
the next day and I sat in a room by myself, and I never ever isolate before I sing. So the fact that I isolated myself and I didn't have one of my little calm down conversations, like I was in a dark place, even like minutes
Wow.
before the performance.
Hmm.
But I did it and I got through it. And that was a victory. Also, that I now am confident that I can sing this repertoire. And I told my agent, you can book me for this. So even though the performance had some moments that I was like, I'm really not happy with how I sang, that didn't go as well as it did in rehearsal, or wow, that went way better than it did in rehearsal. It went from disastrous to less disastrous, this kind of a thing. And I'm also extremely hard on myself. I'm a perfectionist.
I can,
So people
I'm
were
sure
telling
of
me,
that.
that it was really great. And I was like, yeah, you're lying to me, because I know how it is and I know my standard, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
But even though I feel uncertain about how that performance went, and I even recorded it so I could listen back and not create
Nice.
like scenarios in my head. So I'm like, here is the cold facts in waves. I can look at it, in audio waves.
Yeah.
I still am not entirely sure how I feel, but I'm
Huh.
incredibly proud of how much work I put. I never fucking practiced something like I practiced that role. I never put
Wow.
so much of my intellect into teaching myself how to do something that I couldn't do before. Not that I didn't know how to do, I couldn't do it before, and now I can. So the long-term ramifications of putting myself up against this challenge are more meaningful to me than how the performance went. Because I have
That's
now what I call pre-Rosina technique. The character's name is Rosina. Pre-Rosina and post-Rosina. And I'm singing things
wow.
now that I'm like, I couldn't, and they're not even related to coloratura or fast singing or whatever. Just the technical discipline that I developed in preparing that role has
Hmm.
shifted my entire preparation process. And the music
Wow.
I'm capable of singing now that I couldn't even sing 6 months ago is
Hmm.
astonishing. And I say, like, this role I have coming up in Chile, which is like the music that's attached to my soul, I wouldn't be able to sing that if I hadn't prepared Rosina.
Incredible.
So even though I
So
don't know how I feel about
you pushed your comfort zone
it,
yet again
yeah, massively.
and proved that to yourself yet again.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, it was necessary
that's
and painful.
yeah, yeah.
And like calling
And
my mom and
pain
like, I'm a fraud.
when
I'm an
you've
idiot.
done.
I can't do this. She's like, you're very dramatic. And,
Yeah. You should be in theater. Oh wait, you are.
oh, yeah. It's so funny to me too.
I
Like a
guess you're
lot
in the
of
right
theater
spot there.
professionals, yeah, a lot of theater professionals. We start doing theater in high school, and like I don't know. Every theater professional I've ever talked to, I asked them about their high school theater experience, and like, dude, it was traumatic as fuck. And then we all
Huh.
went, you know what I want to do for the rest of my life? This. Like, what?
Uh, that is so crazy.
We're crazy.
Gosh, that
Artists.
is so cool.
Yeah.
That
No.
is an awesome story. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Is there anything else that you want to cover, or anything else you want to talk about?
I'll shout out the farm that I'm working at right now, Del Mar
Please do.
Farm. They're
Delma.
incredible. They do incredible work with children and with animals, and the owner is a delightful lunatic just like me. My mom works there with me as well, so it's a great bonding experience. And
Awesome.
anyone wants to go check them out, Del Mar Farms. A big reason why I am who I am is because of the work I've done with animals. And having that back in my life, now that I have time to get off the road and do that again, it really just makes all the difference in the world for my silly little brain.
That's so cool. We'll put the link
Yeah, great.
at the end here and put it in the bio. That's man, that's so cool. Shannon, I can't thank you enough.
No, this
Um,
was great.
this, this conversation was every bit as good as I thought it would be and better. And man, just so cool to hear the way that you've confronted risk and fear and overcome it and become a risk junkie
Yeah,
like most of the successful people that I've ever
yeah.
come across. So, man, it's so cool. You're super impressive, and I
Thank
can't
you for
thank you
having me,
enough.
really. You ask such great questions. You're very insightful. So,
Yeah, it's so much fun.
yeah,
Shannon, thank
absolutely.
you very much,
Yes, you too. Thank you so much, Chris.
dude. Okay.